I'm Jason, a 28-year-old graphic designer with a passion for meeting new people online. By day, I work remotely from coffee shops and co-working spaces, but by night, I dive into the world of virtual interactions. It's a hobby that started as a way to unwind, but quickly became an obsession. I love the thrill of chatting with strangers, never knowing who I'll meet or where the conversation will go. I've connected with people from all walks of life: students, artists, travelers, and dreamers. Each conversation is a glimpse into another world, a chance to connect, even if just for a fleeting moment. Little did I know, as I clicked on a friend's suggestion and sent a request to a beautiful girl named Samantha, that this interaction would lead me into a nightmare beyond my wildest imaginings, blurring the line between the virtual and the real in the most horrifying way. Jason sat in his dimly lit room, the soft glow of his phone screen casting a warm light across his face. With a curious glint in his eyes, he scrolled through his social media feed, his mind wandering as he searched for a connection in the vast expanse of the digital world. As he scrolled, a photo caught his eye, a strikingly beautiful girl with a captivating smile. "Wow, she's gorgeous," Jason muttered to himself, his heart skipping a beat at the sight of her. With a mixture of nerves and excitement, he clicked on her profile and sent a friend request. To his surprise, the request was accepted almost immediately, and he wasted no time in striking up a conversation. "Hey there," he typed, his fingers trembling slightly as he awaited her response. Seconds turned into minutes, and before he knew it, they were deep in conversation, exchanging jokes and sharing stories as if they had known each other for years. "I can't believe how much we have in common," Jason remarked, a smile spreading across his face as he typed. As the days turned into weeks, their chats grew more frequent and intimate, each message bringing them closer together. "I feel like I've known you my whole life," Jason confessed, his heart racing with excitement at the prospect of finally meeting her in person. Jason sat nervously in his favorite cafe, his eyes flicking anxiously towards the entrance with every passing moment. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the air, but Jason hardly noticed, his mind consumed by thoughts of the girl he had been chatting with for weeks. As he waited, his phone buzzed with a notification, and he glanced down to see a message from another girl. Not the one he had been eagerly anticipating. With a pang of disappointment, he realized that she wasn't coming. Sighing softly, Jason forced a smile as the new arrival approached his table, her smile warm, but lacking the spark that had drawn him to the other girl. "Hey, sorry I'm late," she said, sliding into the seat opposite him. "No problem," Jason replied, his tone polite but distant as he struggled to shake off his disappointment. As they made small talk, his mind wandered back to the girl he had been chatting with for weeks, her absence casting a shadow over their conversation. Despite his best efforts to stay present, Jason couldn't help but feel a sense of longing for the connection he had shared with the other girl. And as he glanced at his phone, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had missed out on something truly special. Disheartened by the turn of events, Jason returned home that night, his mind reeling with confusion and disappointment. The date with the new girl had been a complete mismatch. She was nice enough, but there was no spark. Nothing like the connection he felt with the girl he had been chatting with online. He sank into his couch and turned on the TV, hoping for some distraction from the disheartening evening. The familiar drone of the evening news filled the room, but his thoughts kept drifting back to the girl he truly wanted to meet. Jason logged onto his computer, his heart pounded as he composed a message to the girl, asking her out on another date. He read it over twice before hitting send, hoping she would respond quickly. As he waited for her reply, a news report caught his attention. The anchor's voice was grave, the words sending a chill down his spine. "Authorities have issued a warning tonight about a murderer on the loose in our neighborhood. Residents are advised to stay indoors and report any suspicious activity." Jason's heart sank, a sense of unease creeping over him. He glanced around his dimly lit apartment, the shadows suddenly seeming more sinister. Could he be in danger? The thought of a killer lurking nearby made his skin crawl. Before he could fully process the news, a notification chimed on his computer. His heart skipped a beat as he saw the girl's message pop up on the screen. With a mixture of relief and excitement, he opened it. "Hey, Jason. I'd love to meet up again. How about tomorrow evening? Let's meet at the old warehouse. It's quiet and we can talk more." His heart leaped at her acceptance, momentarily pushing aside the fear that had settled in his chest. He quickly typed out a response. "Sounds perfect. See you tomorrow evening." Despite the ominous news, Jason found himself unable to resist the pull of their budding connection. With a mixture of excitement and apprehension, he prepared for their meeting, his mind racing with thoughts of what could have been. Arriving at the designated location, Jason couldn't shake the sense of foreboding that washed over him as he surveyed the abandoned warehouse before him. "This doesn't feel right," he muttered to himself, a knot forming in the pit of his stomach. As Jason ventured deeper into the abandoned warehouse, his footsteps echoing eerily against the concrete floor, he stumbled upon a dimly lit room at the end of a dark corridor. With a mixture of trepidation and curiosity, he cautiously approached, his heart pounding in his chest. As he pushed open the creaking door, a flickering light illuminated the gruesome sight before him, a room filled with torn faces, their expressions frozen in eternal agony. Horror washed over Jason as he recoiled in shock, bile rising in his throat at the grotesque display. "Oh my God!" he gasped, his voice trembling with horror as he surveyed the macabre scene. What is this?" But before he could comprehend the true horror of what he had stumbled upon, a voice from behind him shattered the silence, sending a chill down his spine. "You weren't supposed to see this," the voice whispered, sending shivers down Jason's spine as he spun around to confront the sinister figure lurking in the shadows. As Jason lay helpless, his heart pounding with fear, the masked figure loomed over him, his voice distorted and menacing. "I was still preparing for our date," the murderer hissed, his words dripping with malice. "You ruined everything." Jason's blood ran cold as he realized the true extent of the danger he was in. With a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach, he listened in horror as the killer shared his gruesome backstory after he was struck and tied down. "I was just a boy when it happened," the murderer began, his voice tinged with bitterness. "My face was mauled by the neighbor's dog, leaving me scarred and disfigured. The other kids at school used to tease me, call me names, and make fun of my appearance. I was an outcast, a freak." Tears welled up in Jason's eyes as he listened to the murderer's tale of woe, his heart aching with sympathy for the pain and suffering the man had endured. "But now, thanks to you," the murderer continued, his voice cold and merciless, "I have a chance to make things right, to take what's rightfully mine." The faces of those who have wronged me, with a sense of dread settling over him like a suffocating blanket, Jason realized that he was facing not just a killer, but a tortured soul consumed by hatred and revenge. And as the reality of his situation dawned on him, he knew that his only hope for survival lay in escaping the clutches of the madman before him. With adrenaline coursing through his veins, Jason untied his hand and seized the nearest object within reach and swung it with all his might at the masked figure looming before him. As Jason hurriedly retreated from the room filled with the gruesome sight of torn faces, his mind raced with a mix of terror and determination. He needed to find a way out of the warehouse before the killer regained consciousness and resumed his deadly pursuit. But as he rounded a corner, he stumbled upon a dead end, his heart sinking as he realized he was trapped with no way out. Panic surged through him as he frantically searched for an escape route, his breath coming in ragged gasps as he desperately tried to calm his racing thoughts. As Jason stumbled upon the room filled with decaying bodies, his heart plummeted with dread, his mind struggling to comprehend the horror before him. "Oh my God," he whispered, his voice barely above a hoarse whisper as he surveyed the scene of carnage. What happened here? The stench of death hung heavy in the air, a sickening reminder of the atrocities that had taken place within these walls. Jason's stomach churned with nausea as he realized the true extent of the danger he had stumbled into. Among the lifeless forms, he spotted the girl he had been chatting with, her once vibrant eyes now vacant and lifeless. "No," he gasped, his heart breaking at the sight of her pale, lifeless form. But even as he mourned the loss of the girl he had grown to care for, Jason's gaze fell upon another familiar face, that of his colleague, his features twisted in a grotesque parody of agony. What have you done?" Jason demanded, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and rage as he confronted the grim reality of the situation. But as he awaited an answer, only silence greeted him, the echoes of his own words reverberating through the empty corridors of the warehouse. And as the weight of the truth settled over him like a suffocating shroud, Jason knew that he was facing an enemy more sinister and depraved than he could have ever imagined. As the murderer notices the light, he immediately enters the room. And as for Jason, he quickly dives in the pile of body so that he won't be noticed. As for the murderer leaves the room and continued to search for him, Jason ran back to the room where the murderer leaves all his tool. Jason picked some weapon and built up some courage to fight the murderer. In a desperate bid for survival, Jason lashed out with all his might, his fists flying in a flurry of blows as he fought to defend himself against the relentless onslaught of the killer. But with each strike, the murderer only seemed to grow more amused, his twisted grin widening as he toyed with his prey. "Is that the best you can do?" the murderer taunted, his voice dripping with derision, fear coursing through his veins. Jason pushed himself to his limits, his muscles screaming in protest as he fought to keep the killer at bay. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't seem to gain the upper hand, the murderer's strength and agility proving to be too much to overcome. Jason felt the weight of his dire situation pressing down on him. His pulse thundered in his ears as he tried to muster every ounce of strength he had left. The murderer, a tall and imposing figure, stepped forward, his eyes gleaming with a sadistic delight. "You've been quite the sport," the killer taunted, his voice dripping with mockery. "But playtime's over." With a savage grin, the murderer lunged at Jason, who barely managed to dodge the initial attack. The metal pipe Jason wielded felt heavy in his hands, and his movements were slow, fueled by sheer desperation. "Come on, boy," the murderer sneered, his voice a chilling echo in the vast, empty space. "You're only making this more fun for me." Jason swung the pipe wildly, but the killer easily deflected the blows, his own strength and skill far superior. With each failed attempt, Jason's energy waned, and the killer's confidence grew. The murderer delivered a brutal punch to Jason's stomach, knocking the wind out of him and sending him sprawling to the ground. As Jason lay there, gasping for breath, the killer loomed over him, his shadow long and menacing. "You thought you could escape, didn't you? Thought you could fight back?" He chuckled darkly, his voice a twisted blend of amusement and malice. Desperation fueled Jason's next move. He swung the pipe again, this time catching the killer off guard and striking him across the head. The murderer stumbled, his mocking grin fading as he realized he had underestimated his prey. Jason didn't waste a second. Summoning every bit of strength he had left, he tackled the killer, using the element of surprise to his advantage. They grappled on the ground, the struggle intense and primal. The killer's hands closed around Jason's throat, squeezing with terrifying strength. "You're just prolonging the inevitable," the killer hissed, his eyes narrowing with fury. Jason's vision began to blur, darkness creeping in at the edges. In a last-ditch effort, he grabbed a nearby rock and smashed it into the side of the murderer's head. The killer's grip loosened, and Jason pushed him off, rolling away as he gulped in precious air. Seeing the killer momentarily dazed, Jason seized the opportunity. With a surge of adrenaline, he delivered a series of blows, each one fueled by the instinct to survive. The murderer tried to fend him off, but the earlier strike had weakened him. Finally, with one last desperate effort, Jason managed to pin the killer to the ground, his weight pressing down on the murderer's chest. He swung the pipe with all his might, the impact rendering the killer unconscious. Breathing heavily, Jason stumbled back, staring at the motionless figure before him. For a moment, silence enveloped the room, broken only by Jason's ragged breaths. He knew he couldn't stay here. The killer could wake up at any moment. Gathering his strength, he turned and ran, his footsteps echoing through the desolate warehouse as he made his way to the exit. Outside, the cool night air hit him like a wave, and he collapsed onto the pavement, relief and exhaustion washing over him. He pulled out his phone with trembling hands and dialed the police, his voice shaking as he recounted the horrific events. When the authorities arrived, Jason led them back into the warehouse, his body aching with every step. They found the room filled with bodies, the faces torn away, but the tools and the murderer were gone. Panic surged through Jason as he realized the killer had escaped, leaving behind only a trail of death and terror.